Welcome to EPublishing, not for the faint of heart. I am very, very lucky to have two very talented publishers with us today. We are very lucky. To my immediate right is my publisher, and she still tolerates me and doesn't throw chairs at me, and so I'm very happy about that. This is Angela Hunt from Hunt Press. And to her right is Peter Paddon from Pendraig Publishing, or Pendraig Press? Publishing. And they are e-publishers. They are doing what a lot of people are doing today, and that is they are saying, you know, we don't need to kill as many trees. We can kill some trees, that's okay, but there's this new thing called e-publishing. It's not so new, actually. It's been out for a little while. We're starting to get a group on it. So as we kick this off, I'm going to do a couple of things real quick. I'm going to just ask you really quickly, if you could, like in a sentence or so, say what you're interested in and some of the things that you might want to have some questions about. And so just shout out your name and what you're doing, and if you're a writer or why you're here, and we'll move from there. So this young gentleman here, go ahead.
My name's Aaron, and I'm a Schulman therapist, energy healer type of person, and I want to write a manual, and I would like to get this manual or this book to promote Schulman therapy, which is a little-known modality of working on people and stretching out their muscles so that it can start spreading fire across the nation, and I can have little therapy shops pop up like McDonald's.
Is it like Rolton?
Very close. That's what we compare it with. It's not as painful.
Right there.
And we use a towel to create resistance and get deeper into the muscle, and the patient doesn't have to take off their clothes. So,
Excellent. Milady?
Oh, my name is Lisa, and I play around with writing fiction, and just kind of exploring different ways of maybe someday getting them out there, getting my stories out there.
Cool. Milady?
Oh, I'm Heather. I'm an English student from UC Irvine. I want to be a book editor, so I'm kind of interested in seeing the new industry of like e-publishing because I haven't learned a lot about that. So,
What's your name again?
Heather.
Okay, Miller?
My name's Nico. I'm a video game developer, and I'm interested in transmedia storytelling, which includes many types of media, including novels.
Excellent. And you, sir?
My name's Derek. I run a small game design company, a LARP company and such, up in Edmonton, Alberta. And we just wrote our first sort of full game LARPing system, and we're just figuring out what to do with it.
And the lady with the bright hat?
I'm Lisa as well. I'm here with Derek. I'm back up today.
Okay.
Backup's important.
Yeah.
And the lady in the back?
I'm Amanda. I run RPGs, write campaign settings, and I'm interested in starting to do the novels.
Oh, cool. So, I don't know about Peter, but I know that Ange and I are both gamer GM types, so we're totally in the geek wheelhouse here. There's, you know, you throw dice at us, we know what to do with them. So, Peter, do you game as well?
I have done. I haven't, not for a long time. Back in high school, I did Dungeons and Dragons, the original version.
Yay! Woo! So, yes, the geeks shall inherit the earth.
If that's
Age
right
of the
with the
geek,
rest of
baby.
it.
Age of the geek.
Age of the geek. So, I think what we'll do is, if you guys have any specific questions and everything, go ahead and raise your hand. What we're going to do first. Okay. What we're going to do first is we're going to start off with who are they? How did they get to be here? And so I think we'll start with the ladies first.
Okay. So, as Drew was so kind to say, I'm Angela Hunt. I'm from Hunt Press. I am formally referred to as Madam Publisher. When I write on the internet, that's how I sign things, is as Madam Publisher. I got started in publishing, amusingly enough, in high school. I was the editor-in-chief for my literary magazine. I was that girl. And took what had been something that was the school joke and proceeded to sell out every issue. to the point of where the school newspaper had to come and interview me. That was loads of fun. And didn't really think much of it after that. I went into, admin, went into corporate America, been writing forever. And then, when was this? Sometime in '96, I started writing really seriously. Had an amazing experience when I was in Europe for 6 weeks with my sister, and began the first book of the trilogy that became Curse and Quanta, the Enchanter's Theorem. I kept sending it out. I kept getting people saying how wonderful it was, how much they loved it. They couldn't sell it, which baffled me. It's a book. You publish it, you market it, you sell it, you find a market. I'd also come from game design as well. I'd written for our Telsorian Games. I wrote for Six Guns and Sorcery. I wrote for Castle Falkenstein. I wrote for Cyberpunk. I wrote for comic books.
I played many of her games, not knowing her.
Yeah, he didn't know me, but he was like, you played my stuff. And then I went into film. And I was in film for ages, independent film. I'd been in theater for 20 freaking years and then some, specifically as a lighting designer. So I've been in entertainment my whole life. The thing about coming from entertainment, especially from film, is that in film we say, put your money where your mouth is. If you believe in your project, you fund it. You don't go around saying, give me money to make my project. Or you especially don't say, you make my project. You do it. Then I get into publishing, and everyone's like, I need a publisher. I'm like, okay, why? I ended up working for a small press. I had a very negative experience with them. They were not professional. Understand that my day job was corporate America, where we had a high standard. I come from the legal field. I come from the banking field, where you're expected to have an incredible high level of integrity and professionalism, and if you don't, you get canned. And then I'm working with a small press that won't return my emails, won't pay me on time. There were reasons for that, I now know, but they didn't communicate what those reasons were. And when you come from a communication field where it's all about talking to people, that's death. So I got hugely frustrated. And then I got hugely frustrated with the Big Six kept saying no to my trilogy, and yet saying, but it's so amazing. Stop telling me how freaking amazing it is, and just publish it. And I turned around and had this epiphany one day of, those people up there in Washington State have less competency than me and have a successful press. What's stopping me? And the answer was nothing. So in July of 2006, I decided to publish my first book, and it was entirely a let's see how this thing works, because at that point, that was when print on demand finally made books that did not look like that. And that's kind of all she wrote. I never looked back.
And so how many books have you published? And give us...
Okay, at this count, we have 31 titles in print. The other thing about being Pod, we don't go out of print. Unless you tell me that you want your book back, I will never, ever, 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 ever take it out of print, because I believe in the long tail. As long as your book is out there, as long as it is making people happy. I published my husband's book of short stories because he's brilliant. Also, he had won Stephen King's On Writing contest. Yeah, he was one of the 5 people that Stephen King chose. I don't know if any of you have read Stephen King's On Writing. In the back, in the hardcover, he said, so I'm never going to do this again, but I'm going to run this writing contest. Here's the concept. Write a story about X. And he gave the parameters of it. My husband's the world's biggest Stephen King geek. He knocked that thing out in like 2 days. I hate him for this.
Wow.
He writes clean, he writes fast. I want to eat his brain. Sends it off. We think nothing of it. Then he gets a phone call from Stephen King's assistant saying, Steve couldn't decide, he picked 5 of you. You're one of them. Watching my husband lose his little kitten mind was the high point of my life. That was like freaking awesome. So when he did that, I was like, well, give me the stories. because he ran into the same problem I did. Oh look, no one will publish him because he wrote interstitial, really weird stuff. I was like, fine, give them all to me, I'll publish them. This book I published in 2006. We still sell copies. Every once in a while it'll just ping out there and I'll be like, okay, it's still moving. You know, somebody will find out that he's written it, they'll buy a copy. But because I don't have to worry about keeping stock on hand, it just prints, delivers. I don't have to worry about it. It's beautiful. I love it.
On-demand books.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and bring Peter into the game here.
Yes, please.
Mr. Peter Paddon, Pendraig Publishing.
Yeah, lots of P's.
I love it. As
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Alliteration. Woohoo! Tell us how you got here and tell us what you're up to.
Well, we came down to 405 notice. You can probably tell from my accent I'm not from around here. Although I've lived here for nearly 20 years now. Grew up in the UK. I'm actually Welsh, but I was born in England, so my family practically disowned me because I was born the wrong side of the border, and that's a big deal where my family comes from. But I got over that somehow, and I'm very, very deeply into paganism, and I got published back in '95 by Paddon Publishing, which is an English publishing company, with a book on ancient Egypt, which I followed up with another book on ancient Egypt. And I was very excited because I was a published author, and sat there waiting for royalty checks, and waiting for royalty checks, and waiting for royalty checks. And I think between that 1995 and today, I've received about $300 in royalties. Now, when they took my books, they were very excited because
Did it earn out?
Hmm?
Did it earn out, or did you get it in advance?
No. It was a small publishing company that didn't give advances, and like I said, over God knows how many years, I earned the grand sum of £300 English. And when I asked them why, they finally told me after years, you're supposed to be marketing your book. I always thought that was something publishers did, and they never told me that I had to go out there and pimp myself out. They also weren't very good at communicating with me at all generally, especially once I moved over here. So I finally, in 2004, decided I needed to do something for myself, and I actually started off making DVDs, because by then I'd been teaching workshops at various stores in the LA area. I'd been doing that back in England as well, but I did it a lot more once I got over here. And so I started creating DVDs of the workshops I was teaching, because CreateSpace came into existence. It's a subsidiary of, well, it started off being an independent company, but very quickly got bought by Amazon. And you could actually set up DVDs and have them sold on Amazon, and they didn't cost you anything, which fitted my budget perfectly because I had no money. And first couple of years, the DVDs sold really well, and I took the money that I got from the DVDs and used them to start publishing books. In about 2007, I think I published my first book, and not my own. I mean, I was totally disgusted with my experience with the company that had published me, but for some reason or other, I balked at the idea of actually publishing work of myself first. I think I wanted to not be a self-publisher, so I published a few other people first and then published one of my books, which worked fairly well, and it's been sort of an interesting ride ever since. I started off focusing exclusively on books on traditional witchcraft and ceremonial magic and other esoteric subjects, and some holistic therapy stuff as well. My brother in Canada is a very highly regarded holistic therapist, a doctor of naturopathy, acupuncturist, and he's until he retired, he sat on all the boards that gave out the certification, and so I published some of his books on reflexology and aromatherapy and anatomy and physiology, stuff like that. But most of my books were on magic of one sort or another, and not the kind you play with cards.
I probably have both of some of your published
I was just
books.
going to say, I think I need to go and look at my shelf. I think I may have your stuff.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, I do have these postcards that sort of has information where you can go and find out about the books. But then I decided I wanted to branch out a bit, and I started publishing fiction. And the first person I published was actually a very dear friend of mine. She writes under the name S.P. Pendraig, and she's actually the lady who introduced my wife and I to each other, and is responsible for me being here. I came over to visit her from England, and ended up meeting the lady who is now my wife, so it's all her fault. And when we first met, she'd given me this manuscript to read, this really cool book that I really loved, and she kept on writing more of the books in the series without having a publisher. And so when I finally decided I was going to start publishing fiction, hers were the first fiction books that I published. Glastonbury Chronicles is one series that she writes, and the other series is Tales of the Dirkshire. And Dirkshire are basically, she keeps saying they're not vampires, but they kind of are. They don't have pointy teeth, but they're immortal and they drink blood. And they're Dougal, who's the only Dirkshire really, is the foster son of the Merrigan. And she basically is what makes him immortal, an immortal blood drinker. But anyway, they were really cool stories, and I liked them, and so I started picking up more fantasy stuff. I decided I was now doing fantasy with a pagan theme as well, and that's kind of gradually stretched. And actually, the most recent fiction novel I published was about 70s music industry. It's actually a detective thriller with a LGBT underlying theme, and I actually started another imprint for that called Excalibur. So that it wouldn't be tainted with the pagan brush, because there are people out there who won't buy stuff from a pagan publisher for some strange reason. I haven't quite fathomed out why.
Because they only gave us an hour.
Oh yeah. Sorry, you do have to reel me in.
Are we here till 11? Oh, okay, good.
2 hours.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, now you're all in trouble.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, but we should.
So anyway, to cut the story short, I've got about 60 books out and about 10, 15 DVDs. Still looking for writers in both the pagan non-fiction and in the fantasy fiction genre.
Yeah, I should probably say I'm looking for exclusively science fiction and fantasy. We do some niche, very niche, nonfiction. I also publish pagan subjects, but like our best nonfiction title, and in fact is the thing that keeps my press afloat of all things, is a homeschooling novel by one by the name of Tammy Takahashi, who is one of the few secular homeschoolers in the world, because typically homeschooling is Christian. She's phenomenal. So we did 2 books by her, and she's hysterical. I can always tell when she's gone to a speaking engagement because she sells 24 books every time. I'm not kidding. It's like nothing, 24 books. I'm like,
Oh,
at a speaking engagement.
42.
Yeah, I better make my publisher happy here.
Yes, please make me happy. Make me proud, baby. Make me proud.
Just a little introduction to myself. I'm Trey Thomas, the storyteller, also known as Robert Seutter. I teach people how to find their stories, tell their stories, and I'm also a huge science fiction, fantasy geek /
Really good.
and I write books. And at a con, Lost Con, a couple of years ago, she was on a panel, and she said these things like, "Yeah, we don't abuse our authors, and we don't expect them to jump through hoops." And well, we do expect them to jump through hoops, but we don't flog them for the privilege.
We don't set them on fire first.
Right.
They're just hoops.
Right.
If you want me to set it on fire, we can do that. But
Yeah.
You have to
But-
size them.
Anyhow,
Yes, we have to
the
access
things they were talking about resonated with me, and so I kind of followed around like a stalker at the con for a little while.
Nice.
I was happy to be stalked.
And then I said, I have a book, and she said, "Really?" And I sent it to her, and she said, "True? How many words is this?" And I said, 276,000. She said, "Yeah, you've committed trilogy." And I went, "Oh." And so this book just came out, Dangerous Dance of Empire, and it's called the Brass Jack Cycle, or the Brass Jack Saga is being called now. But so the first book, second book, and third book, and they all have the Hunt Press logo. Shameless plug. So it's Celtic space opera. Think that. So.
I will tell you why I published True, even though the thing was gigantic, unwieldy, and I could tell was going to be an editing nightmare. I'm sorry.
No,
it was going to just be hard. 10 pages into it, he wrote a line that made me laugh out loud. That was about how Jack had to do percussive maintenance on his head. And I just lost it, because I was like, percussive maintenance? I had never heard that before. It cracked me up, and I was like, I don't care what the rest of the book is. For that alone, I'm publishing it. I mean, it happened to be really, really fantastic. Even if my editor did want to murder me a couple times for what you've done to me, and I was like, it's really good, keep going. So, you know, it was worth it.
When you, from your editor, you keep hearing the words, more rum, more rum. And then I had the extremely good taste and fortuity to get involved with a lovely lady who is also a very talented editor, Miss Kat Ellen over there, who decided she was going to throw herself bodily in between me and the editor and clean it up before it got to the editor so that the editor could actually do her job.
Yeah, I worship her little pink socks.
Yeah.
You know, down to her little toes. I mean, she is amazing. And
she did the covers.
Yes, and she did the covers.
Aren't these pretty?
Yes, they're very
And so, just so you know, if you're on a budget, guess what? You look at all those beautiful star fields and everything, and you say, oh man, that would make a great cover. You write these guys, you say, hey, you make these beautiful photos. Could I use one for my book? And a couple of them said yes. I was like, oh! So that's why the beautiful, glorious nebula backgrounds, which is good for science fiction, they donated the covers, the photos. So that's pretty awesome.
You never be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
The worst they can say is no.
So, but enough about us, by the book. Let's throw out our first topic here. Let's go with one that's fun. Formatting for ebooks.
Well, it's definitely very true that formatting for ebooks is not the same as formatting for print. I mean, I think we both publish in print format as well as ebooks, and it's very, 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 very different because a book that looks great on paper doesn't look so hot on the screen. I mean, if you've got a nice 27-inch high-def screen on your computer, that's one thing, but when you're trying to read it on a Kindle or Nook or your phone...
I read on this all the time. Seriously, this is how I read. When I'm out in the world, this is my primary reading device. I have an iPad. That's not what I read on all the time.
I mean, I don't know about Angela, but my layout artist is really into the art of book layout. She picks the font based on the story. And the whole book is crafted so that the font matches the title, matches the cover, matches everything, matches the feel of the story as well. And then when you get to do the Kindle version, you get to pick one font.
3. You get 3.
Well,
if you want them, you get 3.
You don't really get the fancy fonts, and she still manages somehow to make our ebooks look as pretty as our print books.
Which is an art.
It is, because they have much stricter rules, because you're limited in the fonts you can have. You have to design it in such a way that if somebody decides they want to read it in bigger font because their eyes are not so good, it's still readable.
It's what's called reflowable text. So, you know, it's not set. You know, print is set. That's the way it is. When you get into the electronic format, because it's reflowable text, it's fluid. So you have to think about it in that way.
And the other thing is graphics. If you have graphics in your book, if you've got illustrations or tables, very, very strict. And so you have to make sure everything is absolutely perfect because it's very unforgiving. But at the same time, if you leave all that out, you're left with essentially a Word document that looks really boring. And one of the big problems that you'll find when you're buying ebooks is even from the big publishers, sometimes their formatting on their Kindle or Nook version sucks because they don't give it much thought. They've spent God knows how many thousands on setting up the print version, and they take the PDF file from that, run it through a conversion program, and kick it out to Kindle. And that's literally all they seem to do about it. And you find pictures that are too big, and you find
Question mark.
yeah, text that has been hard formatted for a line length, and so you get like half a page, then it's blank, and then the next page is blank, and then half a page. You get all kinds of nasty things. The worst example I've seen is a book that had a lot of tables in it, and the tables displayed, every column was a separate screen, which meant it was totally unreadable, as most of the book was tables. And I actually contacted the publisher for that one and told them they might want to redo it. I got a free copy.
That was terribly kind of you.
Yeah.
I would have been like, and burn.
Well, I needed the book for research, and I didn't want to pay out for the hard copy. They sent me a free hard copy for pointing it out. Why they never noticed it themselves, I don't know.
Because they didn't look.
Yeah, and of course on the other end of the scale, you've got self-publishers who basically run the Word document that they wrote the original manuscript in through that same conversion process, and you get wallow text, which is very difficult to read. I mean, you get, one of the disadvantages of reading on a screen is that you do tend to get fatigue. And that fatigue is worse if the pages aren't broken up. So you need those spaces. The empty space is almost more important than the words in some cases because it enables you to keep going until you finish the book. And so there's an art to it. And with the very strict requirements, there's a lot of science to it as well. And the biggest mistake anybody makes, and as I said, the large publishers do it as well as self-publishers, is that they don't.
I would say even some of our peers don't do it well. I would chime in on the whole formatting thing because, perfect example, my husband is back to the whole Uber Stephen King fan. It was like you have to read Dr. Sleep, but I had not read The Shining, and you have to read The Shining first before you read Dr. Sleep. So I'm reading The Shining, and this tells you just how styles evolve in publishing. There was a point in The Shining where there was 2 pages of wall of text, not a single line break, not a single paragraph indent. It's just wall of text. And I'm literally like, get through it, Angie, come on, you can do it. I wanted to kill myself. But that was the style of writing then. You could do that. The Victorian style of writing, of proper English, as long as you were still in kind of the same mode, you could just keep writing. There was no need to get to another paragraph. I sit down with Dr. Sleep. Oh, shorter paragraphs. No wall of text. I was like, this is easy to read. And thank God I'm not reading. I can't even imagine trying to read The Shining on this. I think I would have killed myself. I mean, thank God I was reading it in print. I could actually put my thumb on the lines and be like, okay, where am I? You can't put your thumb on a screen. Because if you're on your phone, you're going to repaginate, and you're going to be like, wow, and you're going to lose your mind. So when you're writing, keep in mind that you are writing for a new medium, and that medium requires a different type of formatting. It requires more line breaks. It requires more paragraphs. So while it may not be technically perfect English, ideally, you do not want to embed your dialogue. Please don't embed your dialogue. Do not embed your dialogue. That personal pet peeve makes me crazy. Don't go on for miles and miles with giant paragraphs. Keep them pretty short, especially when you're, because on a phone, short paragraphs actually end up taking up the whole screen. They really don't seem that big or seem that small on a small screen. You will save your publisher and your editor and your layout artist and your psychiatrist an enormous amount of headache. And they won't come back with having chopped things up. Maybe in a way you didn't want it chopped up, because I'll let you know, I will chop. If if I get it and it's not breaking in a way that is readable, I'll take a hatchet to it. That may not be what you want. I will tell you this now, though. Whatever you do, do not come back to your publisher or your editor when they have reformatted your text so that it will be readable on an electronic device. You have violated the integrity of my prose. Never say that.
Because it won't be the only thing violated.
Because if you really want to build a poisonous relationship with your publisher, that's a good start. And you don't want to do that. Small publishers, people who are on the cutting edge, who are trying to adapt to the new world, we're your partner. We want to be in this with you. We're not telling you what to do. You can do it your own way. That's fine. In fact, the power is all yours now. But when we're telling you something like, please format for the device it's going to be on, please, please, please.
It does make a huge difference in sales. You can write the best novel in the world, and if it's not formatted right, people won't buy it because they won't have it recommended.
There will be people literally going, I couldn't read it.
In fact, if you're writing a novel in this day and age, the best thing you can do for yourself is get a good book on script writing, because if you write like a script is written for television or a movie, that's the kind of breakdown you want. Every time there's dialogue, there's a space. Every time there's a switch to an action or narrative, there's a space. Script writing isn't just for television and movies anymore. A good novel is going to be written script writing. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, still do your passionate prose and you know, waxing lyrical about the whichness of the why and the whatness of the wherever, but space it out.
Yeah, I gotta say, and this is a little known because again, since I come from entertainment, and that's my, I wrote for comics, which is also a script form. The thing I get accused of all the time is that I write cinematically. Yeah, that's what I came from.
That's a feature.
That's a feature. It's like you can see it. I mean, it's like you could pretty much take the book and shoot it. That's what I like to think of. And one of the greatest tools that I've ever used in writing is a book by Lou Hunter. It's called Screenwriting 434, which is actually the textbook for the UCLA Advanced Screenwriting class. Lou Hunter is amazing. I recommend him more than Sid Field. Lou actually has credits. He was in the trenches. This is what he did. Most of the people who graduated from Lou Hunter's classes are people that did things like the X-Files, stuff like that. Man knows what he's talking about. But he also talks about how to break things down and how to format it. And I actually still to this day revisit that book every time I start a new novel, because it reminds me of kind of like how to orient myself to what I'm going to write.
So let me ask a stupid writer question.
That's an awesome question.
Okay.
There are no stupid questions.
I was just going to say, there is no such thing.
So writers come to the publishers. How do you want that book for that initial submission set up for you when you're going to say yay or nay or I'm interested in this?
I want a Word document. I want it to be as clean as possible. Please run spell check. Please, for the love of God, don't make me do it. Grammar, I'm not as much, I'm not a grammar Nazi, because for fiction especially, if you successfully can break the rules of grammar to tell a compelling story, I am along for the ride. This man is a violator of the English language, but does it so well that I don't care.
Well,
I'm along for the ride.
Right, but
As long as you can keep people along for the ride, I'm not going to be on you for that.
But in my own defense, I'm writing a book that has a lot of like ancient culture influences, or Celtic, and when somebody calls somebody an Amadon, it's not going to spell check, right? So
Yes, but you can teach your program.
right. But it was fun to have Kat come back and say, "Is this really a word?" And she said that to me a lot, and I would imagine in your business this happens all.
Oh yeah, especially with the esoteric stuff. I mean, there's some very strange words, especially when you get into like angelic languages.
No kidding. Yeah. Oh yeah.
From my perspective, basically any electronic format is fine. I'll take a PDF or Word document. I have a history of being, way back when, in my youth, I was a data conversion specialist. So I can translate pretty much anything into anything. So I don't care what format it's in as long as it's electronic. I've had a couple of submissions where they've actually sent me printouts. And I've got one that I got about a year ago. I haven't got to it yet because it's a hard copy. It's never going to be at the top of my pile. It's waiting for me to be stuck at an airport and happen to have it with me. Whereas all the other ones, I forward them to my iPad and read them on the Kindle app, which makes it really easy. I can be sitting in the car as a passenger, I hasten to add. Like even coming down here, I can sit and read stuff on my phone or on my iPad. So I can get through submissions wherever I happen to be, whenever I've got a little bit of time. I don't have time to read an 800-page hard copy, and to be honest, I'm not used to carrying that much weight anymore.
That actually was, I think, the greatest revelation that I heard from agents, talking about that it used to be that when they traveled, they had these gigantic bags because they had all these manuscripts that they were carrying from place to place, and then, you know, the Kindle came out. And they were able to port all of these electronic submissions to, and now they're like this, they're like,
And,
he had a question.
oh, I'm sorry.
You talked about not worrying about grammar, right?
Wait, be legible.
You know, I kind of see that as a person's style, right?
Right.
Someone has a particular writing style.
Right.
Where does it, do you have a problem sometimes identifying style versus like this person is really, really bad grammar? Because like at one point you have to consider they're communicating something. They have to be able to communicate, right? And style, you can communicate like a universe or like a look or feel, you know what I'm saying? But like, is it hard sometimes to distinguish style versus bad grammar?
You know it when you see it, which I know is a non-answer, but is the only answer I have for you. I mean, one of the things that me and Lorraine, my editor, are constantly talking about is preserving an author's voice. That's one of the things that we are both feel very strongly about. Both of us have had experience of like turning something in and having somebody just edit us into incomprehension because it did not adhere to hardcore, English composition. So we have that experience of there's one thing to be grammatically correct, there's another thing to completely destroy an author's voice and lose the thread of the story. Now, have I gotten stuff that's been incomprehensible where I just want to send them a copy of Strunk and White? Yes, absolutely. And that's another book that I would highly recommend. Get a copy of Strunk and White's Elements of Style. It is the only book on English you will ever need. It's a tiny, tiny little book. It is brilliant. You really don't need much else. Get that in your head and pretty much everything else just flows.
Yeah, voice is pretty obvious. I mean, I had somebody I published last year, Mama Starcasser. She's a conjure woman from Texas. Born and bred, grew up as doing conjure. It's a Christian form of mysticism with healing and magic. They light candles and pray to saints, and they'll sing the psalms over you to make you healed and stuff like that. And she's a wonderful person, very charismatic in person. And she writes the way she speaks, so there's lots of y'alls in it, and there's lots of I want to do this instead of I won't do this. And it's a pain in the ass when we're editing a book, because one of the agreements I made specifically with her is that we wouldn't change her voice. So we'll correct spelling, so we'll change that want to won't, but we won't take out the y'alls and we won't take out the other colloquialisms, because that's her voice. And one of the, we still get a lot of criticisms in reviews that this book hasn't been edited, there's lots of typos. And then they'll be, in the very next review, will say, this is a wonderful book, it's like she's sitting there talking to you, which is why we kept it, because her voice is very important. And that, in this case, it's a non-fiction book. But, I mean, some of the great books of literature were written in colloquialisms.
They're written in dialect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're written in dialect.
It's not common these days, but...
And here's another thing, especially with the current backlash about the lack of diversity in publishing, especially science fiction and fantasy. I am a huge supporter of not whitewashing out dialect. did not whitewash out any of the dialect that's in these books, and there is a gigantic amount of dialect. Gigantic.
Well,
where I literally had another window open of, what is the Gaelic spelling for this? Because
of mice and men. You know,
hugely amount.
yeah.
I mean, you're got really.
Grapes of wrath. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
Steinbeck.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband again, a huge Steinbeck fan. You don't get rid of that. That's the author's voice.
Is your book first person?
No, it's third person.
Third person omniscient, to be specific.
Yeah, I'm a storyteller, and so for me, head bouncing is kind of my native language. I am now attempting to write a novel first person, and it is really
You know, you don't actually head hop that badly.
that you saw.
Oh. Thank you, Kat. You're welcome.
But yeah, there's a ton of dialect because the thing is when they come to the primitive world, there are people running around with swords and black powder. They're Celts, you know, and they're talking in the Celtic patois of the area, and so it drove a bunch of people nuts. But I really thought that it added a lot to the characters because you're not going to have somebody who comes in out of the woods in a medieval culture who's going to walk up and say, "Oh, excuse me, we are being invaded. Would you, bloody hell!" You know, you know, they're going to have a very thick accent and they're going to sound like what they sound like.
That is a difference, though. I mean, if you put those in quotes, then it obviously means that
There are people that will argue that it doesn't matter. Seriously. There are people who will argue that that doesn't matter. They will whitewash that out of existence.
Yeah, and in my case,
really,
in my
that's so funny.
well,
oh yeah,
even in quotes.
Yeah, and in my case, because I've got Gaelic in there, at certain points, what happens is people go, "I have no idea what this word is. It must be changed for the American or for the English word," which loses a lot of the flavor.
Which I think also shot down my trilogy. I mean, because I have characters that, I mean, it's an international cast. You know, one of the characters is Israeli. Sabine, the main character, swears vociferously in Russian all the time. That's what she does when she's really angry, is she swears in Russian. And I had people going, "You can't do that." I'm like, why? That's the character.
Does this mean Serenity ripped you off?
You know, I absolutely adored Firefly when I finally saw it because of the fact that they were swearing in Chinese. I was like, finally acknowledge that we live on a planet, that we're not stuck on one freaking continent. People, I'm multicultural. I come from, my family is Irish and Scottish and Spanish. I am descended from people who actually founded Los Angeles. I mean, that's my history. So for me, it's like, you're going to swear with whatever you swear with. You're going to use the dialect that you grew up with.
So let's move on to a couple of questions because we've got about 5 more to hammer through. But
Yes,
I just want, just really quickly, cover letters. What do you guys want to see in a cover letter?
I really don't care.
I do.
A return address is, and who the person is, what name they want to be published under if I decide to publish them, and a little bit about themselves. I'm not a stickler for a particular format.
Well, the reason I'm saying this is
Yeah.
going into video and it's going to go online and people are going to send you stuff.
For me, I want that's where I do actually want you to be formal. I do want a formal cover letter. I want a dear Mrs. Hunt. I want who you are, what your background is, a little bit about what the book is about. I mean, literally like a line or two. I do not need a synopsis. I will send the full manuscript. I do not want that because synopsises do not ever match the book. Just never. I just want the book. Keep it formal. Keep it professional. Be your best self. Until we have a relationship, I'm not your friend. I'm not. So woo me.
One of the things that Jim Butcher recommended in his writing class, which I had the honor of attending, it was amazing and excellent, was that your story outline that you used for your book often becomes your synopsis. He also said that if you're pitching it to an agent or something like that, who has a particular genre, you say, This story is somewhat like blank and blank, but keep it very basic. This is along the lines of something like this. They go, oh, yes, I am in the market for something like blank and blank, but literally, a couple of sentences. So that was one of the things he recommended.
Yeah, don't send me your book on the interesting stories that, the people at the rest home where you work told you. I'm sure it's fascinating. It's not what I want. It's really unusual science fiction, really unusual fantasy. If it's interstitial in that it doesn't, I don't know if do you all know what I mean when I say interstitial?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ellen Kushner runs the Interstitial Society. I highly recommend checking up on them. Interstitial is that fiction which does not fit one genre. It is fiction that lives on the edges. It's where science fiction and fantasy meet horror. I mean, I had people flat out tell me that I wrote a trilogy of horror novels. And there are huge elements of horror in the trilogy. I've also had people say that it's science fiction. I've had people say it's fantasy, interstitial. I love that. I love stuff that refuses to be pigeonholed. I love stuff that refuses to follow anything.
Hey, I got it right.
Yes, you did! Oh my God, no, I'm not kidding. This was right up my alley.
I would say that right after writing a good story, the next most important thing is actually doing some research on who you're sending
Yes.
it to.
Don't just
do
not wallpaper.
I get submissions all the time on the non-fiction side for New Age books. We don't publish New Age. Okay, I'll pass one to you.
Yeah,
you probably get them as well.
I do, but I do publish New Age, and I'm always looking for new stuff.
If you're sending your submission to somebody who doesn't publish the genre that you're aiming for, you're wasting your time and theirs.
And little known fact, we remember who you are. We do, and we do all talk to each other. I mean, it's a very small pond. There's not a lot of us. And we all get to know each other, and we all hang out, and we all hang out in the bar.
They have therapy sessions.
Well, it's called the bar. I mean, if you want to know why the publishers and the agents are in the bar drinking by like noon, that's why.
I have gotten several emails, and the tagline is, and this is why I drink.
And this is why I drink. Yeah. We actually, me and my dear friend Kate, who runs Candlemark and Gleam, which is another small press, we once foolishly made a publisher's drinking game, which someday I will publish. But we agreed that if we were ever to actually ever play it, we would die from alcohol poisoning probably within half an hour.
Is that the one where you start up, realize you're a publisher, drink?
Yes, that is. You realize you're a publisher. Take a shot.
All right, here we go. Next topic, tossing it out there: pricing and author compensation.
So here's
we have to pay.
Yeah. So I'll just say this out front: we don't do advances at Hunt Press. I don't believe in them. The reason why I don't believe in them is that it unfairly gives authors the sense that the book is going to sell X amount of copies. That doesn't always happen. No matter what you do, sometimes you get a dud, and it's not anybody's fault. It's not the author's fault. It's not the publisher's fault. For whatever reason, you didn't connect. Failure is a part of this business.
It can just be timing.
It can be timing. It really does not say anything about the book. It just says, wrong time, wrong place, wrong everything. Do not be discouraged when that happens. Write the next book. In fact, the minute you submit the first book, be writing the second book. Do not wait for anything. So that happens. Better to get paid for stuff that actually sold. That's where you want to be. And more importantly, it's fiscally responsible on the part of the publisher. A lot of small presses vanish because they'll start putting out these advances, and then the books don't sell, then they're in the red, then they're gone. I've been profitable since the first year. I mean, we broke even for like 5 years, and then we started making tiny little profits, and oh, I just love them. They're so adorable.
Mm-hmm.
But we were there because we don't overextend ourselves. And I do that because I believe in staying in business for my authors. The last thing I want to do is be fiscally irresponsible. And advances are fiscally irresponsible. So, on the one hand, SFWA will tell you that any press that doesn't give you an advance is not something you want to work with. I do not agree. I think that you want to look at their track record. I think you want to look at how long they've been in business. I think you want to look at how their authors talk about them. Feel free to talk to my authors. Seriously. They are, in my opinion, my best marketing. They are the reason why I do what I do. And they often say better things than I ever would. So I'm not the person to ask.
Peter?
I totally agree. Most small publishers are on a shoestring budget. I mean, I started Pendraig with $100 for my DVDs. Yeah.
Wow.
That's only because I've been
had
selling
20.
DVDs.
I had 20, and that was it.
And if I gave one author in advance, then that would be the only book I published that year. It's as simple as that. Because you know, the old joke about how do you become a millionaire in publishing, start with $2 million, is very true. It's a labour of love.
It really is.
I don't draw a salary from my company. All money, including the royalties for my own books, gets plowed straight back in because I want it to grow. And it really doesn't work if you're giving people huge advances. What you do is you give people a really fair deal in their contract. I mean, I split the profits 50-50 with my authors.
I do 15% for print, just because and that's off net, that's not off cover, because of the fact that, to be perfectly honest, we get screwed in print. Screwed. The discounts that the distributors take is outrageous for every book that you see, including this one. So this book, prices from $22.95 to $24.95, right? That sounds outrageous, doesn't it? You just want to kill yourself, right? Do you know how much I see every book?
Quarter.
$4.95. Out of that $4.95, I have to pay me, my editor, my artists, him, and anybody else I had to hire to work on that. $4.95, that's what I see.
Yeah, we do about the same per book.
That's the reality of publishing.
Publishing market.
Publishing, period.
Paper.
Paper, period. If you're in print, that's how much you're taking home.
And that's not taking into account returns. I mean,
We
publishing,
don't do returns.
Yeah, we don't.
This is
either.
why we don't do returns.
Publishing is very hidebound and very slow to change. I mean, add into the fact that most of the sources, even for digital publishing, you're getting paid 3 months behind, 3 months in arrears.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I've had distributors not pay. Barnes & Noble